Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today is Saturday, March 29th, so this video won't be up till Monday. It appears that the stuff with Trump and Signalgate is gaining some traction, and maybe he will have to deal with it. I don't know. With all these things, regardless of that, someone will be fired and they'll be move on. It's a done deal. And I got this one comment. Hopefully, I remember to read it from a Trumper, which is just silly. Well, let me just read it now. So this is not what the introduction's about, but let me just read this anyway, because it's pertinent to it. Are you kidding me? I guess that's to me. Trump and his mini me's just keep on making things worse. Signal scandal. Are you kidding me? There is nothing there. This is a nothing burger, as Dems like to claim. It made them look bad, but had no effect. Your idiots killed 13 and wounded. Your idiots killed 13 and wounded many others. Walsh said he set up the chat and he takes full responsibility. He said the same thing the day it happened. You act like they are hiding in the basement like Joe did. This person thinks I'm a Democrat because of the title. They didn't watch the video, and they're moronic Trumpers. Justice, the guy didn't take responsibility. And as Republicans, you're supposed to stand pro-military Republicans or whatever. I don't even know what these Trumpers are. You're supposed to stand for a certain level of accountability. Like military people have accountability like nobody else. Like if there's a screw up, it's your frickin' fault. And it just is, and people know that who have been in the military, associated with the military. There's no tolerating failure. And just like the reporter who, let me address the other comment here too. I think that's about him being in Mossad. Just like the reporter, there's a little bird chirping outside. It must have fell out of its nest or something, or it's a little bit driving me nuts. It's been going on for like an hour. It just keeps on. You guys can't hear it, but I can. And it's real. I have a noise canceling mic. Just because they send this thing to the reporter, it has nothing to do with the reporter and the Democrats. The Democrats are using it to get him, just like January 6th thing. But January 6th was so much more contrived. This is like a real thing. That should bother. It's a real thing because it should bother Republicans and pro-military Republicans and Trumpers. This should bother them because it's a failure to take responsibility. It's a failure to again, none of this stuff means shit to me. I don't care about it. It's not my thing. But they've been hammering Joe Biden of being horrible, the worst president in history, careless, these things, reckless, all these bad decisions, and then they go and do something like this, which is just out and out, just like a massive fuck up, and they're just bad. But the thing about it is that sucks about Trumpers. I mean, if that for them and for people who have to deal with them, is that Trump has told you exactly who he is since he became a famous person. Like anybody would know anything about Trump, he's narcissistic as fuck, and he's just all about himself, and he's selfish, and he screws people over, anybody over, especially poorer people that he can bully, and he cheats on his wives, and he's a scumbag guy. He's not, he hasn't been hiding anything. He's not, like, to think that he cares about America or you is silly. Like, it's just silly. Like, only a silly person or a desperate person would believe any of that shit, right? Like, it's not, I mean, he's displaying it every day when he goes out to these rallies. You can tell what he's about. He likes holding court. He likes the attention. He likes people hanging on his every word. He likes the love and affection he gets from these desperate people. But he doesn't give a shit about any of these things. He's just he's a grifter. He's not he's not really hiding his being a grifter. I had to go outside. My dog started barking, and that bird was chirping. It's actually quite a bit away. I thought it was right outside my window. It must be a bird that's trying to win another. They're doing their mating rituals. But anyways, it's rainy today. Like yesterday was this really good spring day, and I said that in the video. And then uh, I got this massive migraine. I haven't had migraine like I don't know, remember the last time, like over a month. And I usually they're just small headaches that are, but I had this one that was lingering all day, and I had slept really well the night before. Whenever I sleep like 8 or 9 hours, I seem to get a headache like midway through the middle of the next day, which is a weird thing. Anyway, so I slept late today again, and woke up. It's kind of rainy out, and it's just a little bit groggy. But getting back into this thing, there are people who voted for Trump because they thought Biden screwed up, and they're like, well, maybe the Trump isn't that bad or whatever. Yeah, whatever. They're not Trumpers. And then there's Trumpers, and what Trump has been able to convince maybe 30 to 40% of the population is that he can make America great again. Like he can change all the mill fortunes. People who see the country falling into the shitter. I mean, people can see that it's on both sides. People know there's apocalypse coming. Like everyone knows on some level. It's over. But like it's just wishful thinking. I have it. We all have it. I have it maybe less than you do, but I still have it. It's just, or just not necessarily in denial, just not wanting to deal with it, or not really. Well, that's still far off or whatever, right? Maybe we'll make it to the end of my life, this kind of thing, whatever it might be. Like, just not, it's at least it's not going to happen today, so I'm not going to worry about it, kind of thing. And why worry about it? Because there's nothing, worry is just wasteless, wasteful, waste of energy. But he's convinced people that he can change that. And it's what people want to hear. He's tapped into something that people see the world collapsing around them. And when someone says, I can save you, and he's able to say it in a way that appeals to them, these specific people, because he's good at, the one thing he's good at understanding is his audience and where they're at. Like, what are they desperate? What do they want to hear? He's good figuring out what other people want to hear. Like, it's the only time he takes an interest in somebody else, just to tell you what you want to hear. And he's been able to do that. But it's silly because even if he was great, which he certainly isn't, even if he was capable of doing everything he's saying, which he can't, and he's not, the system can't be saved. Like, it's not, there's nothing that's savable about it. And he's a grifter, and he tells you he's a grifter, but you're like, you have these two things in front of you. And most people say, all right, I can see this guy's a grifter because he's telling me he's a grifter. But then there's some small group of people saying he's a grifter, but he's also saying he can save us, and they believe the second thing because they're so desperate, and it's just sad and silly, but makes them utterly worthless because they're in such levels of denial. I mean, it's bad, and so the Trumpers are just to be dismissed as, just and there's nothing that he can do or say that's going to make them give up their hopium, at least within reasonable limits, I would assume, but maybe not. Maybe there's nothing at all. I want to get to an overall point. This is why I'm doing this introduction about the apocalypse and what we're experiencing. But this is the other thing that somebody left. I was listening to somebody. I'm not going to say the person's name because I'm not going to promote them. And my understanding is that the journalist was added or given access by the intelligence agencies, such as Mossad. The journalist is a former IDF. Signal has CIA backdoor. It's not secure. I'm just wondering why Trump administration isn't saying this. Further, why does Mossad want to make Trump administration look dumb, when they already are doing everything for Israel? So many questions. Okay, so some other people said this guy was Mossad, right? And that makes no sense to me. See, here's the issue with that. This is what happens in the truth community. Some people believe that this guy is Mossad. Like, there's this rumor that goes around the truth community, right? Like this morning, I take these various supplements, and they have those little packets that keep moisture from, from the pills being subjected to moisture. And the packet fell out and fell on the floor, and I was like, I don't want to put it back in like it's the bottle is, I mean, it's a third full, like it's it's mostly gone anyway. and I'm sure that they'll take these supplements before any moisture issues. And whatever. And I looked at the pack, and I'm like, I wonder if these things are toxic in some way, because I mean, it's they're plastic, and they have these little pellets in there to absorb moisture, and I wonder how much they affect, what the residue, whatever, right? Just like everything else. And then the thought came to me, it's like I could say these things cause cancer. Not that I would ever do that. And it would become a thing. Like just me saying it here, it would circulate, and before you know it, people would be saying, "Oh yeah, those things cause cancer," because there are those of us who believe that everything's there to hurt us or whatever. And it's very easy to start a rumor like that. I talked about as a kid that we were told that bubble gum was made with spider eggs. I've said, there's Bazooka bubble gum, which was the bubble gum of choice until bubble gum, which was soft and just better, right? And Bazooka was losing market share, so there was all of a sudden a spider egg story. But people believe this guy's Mossad, and then this thing happens, and then the two things don't make sense, right? And so there's a possibility he could be Mossad, and it's a possibility they could be sharing that with him. Then why would Israel fuck him over when Trump's giving Israel? They've said over and over again. I mean, this is the kind of thing that pissed Trump off and turned Trump against Israel. And so, like that's how Trump is. He's very petty about these things. So whatever it is, right? I mean, that's it's like a possibility, but it could be that the truth community just made some shit up and said this guy was in Mossad because he was, he like many other Jewish people with dual citizenship is a member of the IDF. But why has he been so hard on Trump all along when Trump is so much better on Israel, and they're all great on Israel for Israel, right? I mean, there's not one politician I mean, just the little bit that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris said after licking Israel's boots, they said, we also have to be concerned about Palestinian life. They're only saying that for their very liberal base. They don't even mean it. They're just saying it like they're just doing it for political cover. And just saying that the Palestinian people have a right to live. The Palestinians have a right not to be, genocided. I mean, they didn't even say that because they didn't use the word genocide. But that's just implying that the Palestinian people were actually people. It was too much for Israel, and they turned on Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. I mean, that's, after Joe Biden came out now said that he's a Zionist. He said, I'm a Zionist. And so, this stuff is, like there's lots of stuff in the truth community that people believe, and then the evidence shows that just to be the opposite. But let's say this is some sort of a mind fuck or whatever, just for whatever reason. It's part of the show, which it always could be, always is to some extent. Then that is whatever it is. Then you're never going to figure it out because it's just mired in levels of just deception and other things. But, aside from these two things, and we'll come back to this as I cover some of these things. I've talked about this once in a while for a number of years now. The collapse of the apocalypse has not really affected us like it's affected people in the Ukraine. So I was watching something, the news just came out. I turned the TV on and it was on a news station already. It might have been CNN. I think it was CNN. And they were doing a piece about the Ukraine. And they showed these two soldiers going into the cities, and the cities were fine, like there was no issues. Where they're fighting is, like where they're not fighting, everything's kind of the same, right? There's places that are close to the Russian border where it's tough. But these cities, because I have friends from, doing the Sajmarg meditation, people I know from seeing them in India, nice people, Ukrainian people, and they're not, and they, I have friends, they're on Facebook. And I looked at their Facebook pages. I think I have 4 or 5 of them, and not one of them had any, like their own images, their own they're. In fact, a lot of them were posting shit from like CNN, right? Posting stuff from international news that was stuff that we're getting. Like they're not seeing the war in their cities, but these two soldiers were going through these cities and walking up to young men and checking their ID to make sure they're not dodging the draft. And the soldiers said, well, they really are having trouble finding any draft dodgers because of social media. So as soon as again, if you're thinking about Gaza, where they have no electricity, no water, no internet, no anything. In these cities, they're just nice modern cities. Ukraine has some money, they have some resources. They showed them in like a nice park, and as far as we would know from this video, there was no that I would know is that there's no war at all, right? And they on social media, as soon as they see the soldiers, everybody says they're looking for draft dodgers in the park, and everyone, he said, not only the young people, everyone just disappears, like, and they become, as soon as these guys show up, it becomes a ghost town. But then they showed a grave site where there's all these people and moms weeping and all these people because they've lost so many young men, and their birth rate is incredibly low. They're having a very the women there are having trouble giving birth, coming to term, like a lot of them are having miscarriages and other things, and their birth rate is the lowest in the world right now, or something like that, and their death rate is one of the highest, and so they're actually hemorrhaging population, especially young people. Like they're not going to have other generations. I mean, who knows what kind of weapons are being used? Maybe that's part of the thing. But these people in the city, unless they have a relative, maybe so there's some things they don't have anymore, like some, but most of the stuff they're probably trading is with Europe. Their lifestyle hasn't been affected, even in the Ukraine, like for the majority of people there, the war isn't relevant to them. Like most wars, all the wars that we have, they're overseas. Like no one's invading America. So we don't feel the war, like Vietnam War. If you're watching videos and shit, this is what I'm talking about here. Like if you are watching what's going on, if you just unplug from the news, you wouldn't really be aware of all the bullshit and all the chaos. And, you'd be relatively better off, except that you wouldn't know that shit's going south, right? And so in 2008, when there was the first kind of that economic collapse, there were a lot of people, and I saw this in California, there's like people in tent cities that were making $200,000-$300,000 a year, and then they became obsolete. Some of this had to do with technology, and some of it had to do with just changing, all these things. But it was a small number of people. These tent cities started showing up where people were like losing their homes, and they were making, bank like forever, and then they just, they're spending everything they made, and they, within 6 months they were homeless, right? And then they were obsolete. They couldn't find jobs and whatever. But that wasn't the majority of people. And so there's some people who are directly suffering. Of course, when we look at our grocery bill, we're like, holy shit, it's crazy, the inflation. But we still have internet, we still have food, we still have water. We have to cut back a little bit, tighten our belts, but it's not anything substantial. It's not real deprivation. And so the apocalypse hasn't hit yet. And what we don't know is how fragile the system is, because it's going to take a major, at least partial, systemic collapse, like something like that, for this thing for all this stuff to register, right? It's going to take something of that nature for us to be affected. Like when we don't have gasoline, or we don't have, our gasoline's like $20 a gallon, or the food goes up crazy, and our groceries are like we saw one during COVID. When you went to the grocery store, there wasn't things there. The shelves were empty. I mean, immediately people started buying canned goods and toilet paper and shit like that. And you went there and you're like, holy shit, like the grocery store is empty, right? How the fuck's that happen? And that can happen like within, a major event, all this stuff can be wiped out within a short period of time, right? Let's say like 90% of the population died from some virus. And up until that point, the people lived for like a month. We would eat up all the food that's available. So the people who survived, you wouldn't be able to find canned goods anywhere or anything like this. You'd have to go home to home. You've seen this in some of these movies and post-apocalyptic things. It's amazing how quick we could go through. We have a constant, I mean, again, 25% of the world's resources is being used by 5% of the people. So in these other countries, it's even worse, right? And so, people could like start turning into cannibals within like a week or two. It's crazy, but like that shit happens in some of these places. When the stuff, this guy, Joel Skounson, he has this book called, I think it's called Strategic Relocation. And he builds like safe rooms and shit for people. He's got this book to where the good places are to live, and he analyzes them based in other systemic collapses. Like he talks about one of the worst places to live is there's these highways coming out of California where there's like 28 million people walking down these highways, and they go 3 miles, to the left and the right of the highway, devouring everything in their path, like farms and whatever, eating fucking cow, like whatever they find. People, like it's just hordes of people who are desperate and starving and walking up the highway, when they're forced to relocate for some reason or another, right? I mean, this is, there's things that happen, but we're not like aware of that potential, like how quickly it could come upon us, right? And, if more people were suffering, it'd be one thing, but people are suffering not to the extent where they are looking to, rock the boat and just go, full mob or whatever. But when people don't have the internet or don't have electricity or any number of things, and this will happen at some point, it happens everywhere. And America is like, hemorrhaging these things. There'll be, everyone will be realized we're in the apocalypse. But even with all the signs being there, and they're there, it doesn't matter, right? Like it doesn't matter until it hits, because it's hard to believe that our system will be anything than it. We don't have a reference point. We didn't grow up with this. It's like, oh, here it comes again. We didn't like if you grew up in a place like this, if you came from as some refugee from some collapsed civilization, collapsed country, government and economy, then you would know. Like you would, oh my God, here it is. We've seen this before, right? But like we haven't, so it's so much easier to believe that the system will stay strong. Oh, they'll figure it out, or something will happen. Oh, because there's no reference point. None of us has experienced that. Since the Depression, which is, about 100 years ago, right? So, I mean, like 100 years ago, that's when, which is like there's not people who are still alive now from the Depression ages, for the most part. Maybe, those people, who the fuck was going to listen to that? Those frickin', shrunken prunes. Like it's like those people are like, I see, and they couldn't even see it because they're not even, like, they don't have the facilities to look around and see what's going on. They're watching Fox News or some shit, whatever they're watching. But they're not, capable of perceiving what's happening now. But all the signs are there, all the things, all the indicators, all the things, and we just have this false sense of security and hope and belief. I have it. We all have it. I look at this shit every day, and it just keeps on getting weirder and weirder. Be like, all right, this is, we're still everything's still working, right? Everything's turned on TV. Everything's, grocery stores still open. I mean, everything, economy, even after the fucking COVID bullshit thing, right? All that fear and crisis that they, we bounce back from that, and it is what it is. But at some point, it won't. Like there'll be that day, or whatever, that week or whatever it is, where you're like, oh fuck, it'll be like the oh fuck, it's the oh fuck day. Like it'll be a celebration. The day there was an oh fuck. Here it is. I knew it. Like I knew it. Fuck. And then that'll be that. And then people will deal and whatever. But up until that point, it's just all this bullshit. This just a lot of words and a lot of talk and just a lot of meaningless activity. For a dying civilization that has jumped the shark a long time ago. Anyways, with that cheery note, let's get into the other stuff here. So I just noticed this guy, Gaydar, like this Republican guy. Look at this expression. But anyways, I have an update on my chickens, my chicks. They're starting to jump up and sleep on the roost or be on the roost. That's how they sleep standing up. You've seen the sleeping thing from last video. So here's the update video, then we'll get into the other stuff here.
Chickens on the roost there. That's how they sleep as they get older.
Okay, so this is from an earlier Trump video. I showed you this, but this clip now stands out because, Trump said a lot of bullshit, which he always does. And so sometimes the smaller bits that he says gets lost unless you see them in standalone videos. So this is him throwing Mike Waltz under the bus.
Mike Waltz, I guess he said he claimed responsibility, I would imagine. Had nothing to do with anyone else. It was Mike, I guess. I don't know. I was told it was Mike.
I was always told it was Mike. It was Mike. It was going to be Mike.
He took responsibility for it. Hegseth is doing a great job. He had nothing to do with this. Hegseth. How do you bring Hegseth into it? He had nothing to do.
Okay. So, one of the things that Trump has done with his supporters is make them believe that he is decisive, right? I mean, if you think about what Trump sells to people about himself, that he is decisive and he'll take decisive action. And he's been taking decisive action since his second term, like his, everything that he's done here, all the stuff he's doing with Elon Musk and all these other people, that he would take decisive action, and he's doing that. And for the Trumpers, they're like, look at him being decisive. We want a decisive guy. But it doesn't take much for Trump to quit on something. It doesn't take much for Trump to stop doing something if he gets feedback. That guy who used to work for him, who is very liberal and he's a comedian, he's not, the most reliable source, the guy who worked with Trump and has talked about him. One of the people who's willing to not worry about the NDA and just say everything about Trump. He said the guy, loves to be loved, and he doesn't really like to fire people. He likes people loving him, which, you can see. He likes people, liking him. And so when he has issues where he's not liked, he actually curls up in a fetal position, which I could imagine would happen, right? That the guy doesn't know how to deal with various levels of crisis and things. So he seems decisive. And this is what Trump is great at, is being a chameleon. Like, how can Trump be so loved by one group of people and so hated by another group of people that see an entirely different person? The way that Democrats and liberals look at Trump, and it's not just because of what he says and his beliefs, it's the kind of person that he is. And that one group of people can see him as the complete opposite of what the other group of people see him as. And that's what they have in Trump. That's why they love him. Because he inspires hate and love and, affection and positive feelings from one group of people and hatred and vitriol from the other group. He's like the phenom. He's the perfect one. Because he says so much different bullshit. He's all over the place. And he takes contradictory positions. And he was a Democrat donating to the Clintons. And then he changed over to being a Republican in 2009. Only 7 years before he started to run for office. I mean, not even that, 6 years. And so he was a Democrat his whole life, donating mostly to Democrats, but he also donate to Republicans. And so his positions, he doesn't have positions. He changes his position all the time. I mean, just watch what he says here. There's no decisiveness.
Mike Waltz, I guess he said he claimed responsibility.
I guess he claimed responsibility. I'm not saying it. He said it.
Responsibility, I would imagine.
I would imagine it was him. I don't know. Why would I know? I'm not in the loop. What do you guys think? What are you guys hearing? Why would I know more than you guys?
Nothing to do with anyone else. It was Mike, I guess. I don't know. I was told it was Mike.
I was always told it was Mike. I guess. I don't know. I don't know. And so he chameleons himself. And so people think he's actually decisive and he's going to get things done, but he's none of those things. Like, he wants to just preserve himself. He's a survivor, right? He's and his survival skill is to be able to convince people that he's going to do something great or whatever it might be that they'll give him money for, because he blows through money really quickly with his grifting. He doesn't have any skills, and so just convincing you to convincing banks, convincing investors, convincing the NBC network when he was on The Apprentice, convincing people who are watching him that he has something going on, that he is, a capable person. He's not. And so telling people what they want to hear and being a chameleon and being able to blend in and, change his, how you perceive him based in his, his verbal skills. But he's none of the things that the people think he is. Like the people on the right or the left, he's not a person with a real agenda in terms of all the the stuff that they think. Like, he's driven by some racist purpose of the left thinks or whatever it is, right? Like Trump is racist, but it isn't is what he cares about. Trump is just Trump is just a chameleon. Like I said, he's nothing. There's nothing in him that's stable or solid. He doesn't believe in anything. He doesn't have any really deep opinions about things. And his big thing now is to make it easy for himself and get rid of all the things, obstacles that are in his way to push forward whatever bullshit agenda that he's pushing forward. And it's almost like he does these things that when he went bankrupt before, he just believes that somehow it's all going to work out, and that whatever he's doing is like he's got some Midas touch. Like I think he thinks he has a Midas touch, and he doesn't. And he just thinks that, oh, it'll all work out. And when it doesn't, he takes no responsibility for any of it because he's got the Midas touch. So it must be somebody else that screwed up. It must be the Democrats or Joe Biden, or it must be Mike Waltz or whatever it is. It's never him, right? And so, he's just he's just the only thing. There's no depth to him as a person. The only thing he is what you see here.
He took responsibility for it. Hegseth is doing a great job. He had nothing to do with this.
He'll totally throw Hegseth under the bus if he needs to. Like Mike Waltz is the guy he's pissed at, and there's reports now.
New tonight, NBC News has learned President Trump is privately angry with his national security advisor, Mike Waltz, according to two Republican sources, after Waltz mistakenly added a journalist to that group chat about military strikes in Yemen.
Okay, so Trump is like a fraud. And I know he's mad at Mike Waltz because we know this has happened with everybody else. It happened with Steve Bannon. It happened with his fixer, longtime fixer, Michael Cohen. It happened with a number of people. Rudy Giuliani, who refused to pay, right? Rudy Giuliani, his lifelong friend. I mean, all these things. He snoozles Rudy Giuliani's fake bosoms when Rudy Giuliani dressed up like a woman. I mean, a number of these people. John Bolton, who are the people that Trump has had blowouts with, right? His, ex-wives, all these people, right? Like Trump, has to blame somebody. Chris Christie. He gave Chris Christie COVID. He wanted Chris Christie to say that he's the one who gave Trump COVID, right? Trump appeared at a meeting with COVID and gave everyone COVID. And so, I mean, all these things, like you see these people who are lifelong Trump people, loyal to Trump, kiss Trump's ass, tell Trump how great he is. And yet things go south and he throws them under the bus. And, Mike Waltz may or may not be responsible for this. Like, the overall story, Mike Waltz is obviously a moron, but he'll throw anybody under the bus. And that's why he blew out all those people in his first administration, because shit starts happening. Things don't go the way Trump wants them to go, and Trump believes he's the one with the Midas touch, so someone's got to be at fault, and it's not him. And so he just throws people under the bus, which the people get really pissed about because they were so loyal to him. They end up giving up so much for Trump, their credibility and everything else. And then he just, throws them under the bus, and then they write a book about him, right? Because this is what chameleons do, because he's morphing himself to whatever the circumstances. I don't know. I guess it's Mike. Maybe it's Mike.
Despite the president's public defense of Waltz.
I think it was very unfair the way they attacked Michael. He's a good person.
The blunder creating
He's a good person.
Days-long controversy for the White House.
He's a good person. Like, he doesn't understand how any of this works, right? It's a fucking blame game. It's a blame fest. Like, the media is just about blaming people. Like, you fucked up, who's to blame? Like, that's, whether it's sports or Hollywood or anything that's newsworthy, somebody fucks up and then someone has to be blamed. And that person's just a piece of shit, right? Because, nothing else they've done and nothing, everything that they've ever done that's good doesn't matter. They're just the piece of shit that fucked up. Something bad happened and you're the guy who's responsible. That's what America's about. Like, it's just immature and petty and stupid. And Trump's all about that. Trump plays the blame game all the time. He's been blaming Joe Biden and say, oh my God, Joe Biden's a nice guy, or any of these other people. If they did something, they fucked up. I mean, if it was Biden, he'd be like, you got to fire people. He said Biden never fired anybody. He has all these people that did dumb, stupid shit. He never fired anybody, remember? That's what he said in the debate. Why did he even fire anybody? Let's just play that clip here.
Much. Let's turn to the cost of child care, which many American families struggle to afford. President Trump, both you and President Biden have tried to address this issue, but the average cost of child care in this country has risen to more than $11,000 a year per child. For many families, the cost of child care for 2 children is more than their rent. In your second term, what would you do to make child care more affordable?
Just to go back, the general got fired because he was no good. And if he said that, that's why he made it up. But
So he was asked about childcare, which is a big deal. But he's still back on some bullshit argument they had about fire. Like, look at Biden. Look at these fucking guys. Like, this, we accepted this, like, as being the best that we could produce, right? The blue tie and the red tie and the fucking, I mean, these 2 fucking guys, right?
But we have 19 people that said I didn't say it, and they're very highly respected, much more so than him. The other thing is, he doesn't fire people. He never fired people. I've never seen him fire anybody. I did fire a lot. I fired Comey.
Look at this ghoulish motherfucker, man. Like,
because he was no good. I fired a lot of the top people at the FBI, drained the swamp. They were no good. Not easy to fire people. You'd pay a price for it, but they were no good. I inherited these people. I didn't put them there. I didn't put Comey there. He was no good. I fired him. This guy hasn't fired anybody. He never fires. He should have fired every military man that was involved with that the Afghanistan horror show, the most embarrassing moment.
so, you have something that isn't as bad as that. There's not American soldiers who died. But, I mean, he got stuck with that. Biden did. It's not fair to Biden. It is fair because Biden was responsible as a senator and vice president for making that mess, making the whole, all those wars, those bullshit war messes. He was in, part of the neocons and all that shit, warmongers. But, Trump now has an issue, and he can't fire the guy because this is a Trump guy, guy who loves Trump. And, he should fire the guy. But Trump says, oh, yeah, I fired all kinds of people. You fired people who were anti-Trump. That's why you fired them. They're people that weren't loyal to you. They didn't fucking, and they didn't, they didn't kiss your feet, right? So this, and of course, he sometimes has to throw somebody under the bus, like I said. But, he's ragging on Biden for not firing the people. But someone needs to be fired. 2 people, really. This is a disaster thing for, just a perception. But he's not decisive, right? I think Mike did. I hear it's Mike. Maybe it's Mike. I don't know.
Moment in the history of our country. He didn't fire. Did you fire anybody? Did you fire anybody that's on the border that's allowed us to have the worst border in the history?
Jesus Christ, he looks like he's hiding here. Like he's like Gollum sitting in the corner, like, my precious, like fucking Jesus Christ.
The world, did anybody get fired for allowing 18 million people, many from prisons, many from mental institutions? Did you fire anybody that allowed our country to be destroyed? Joe, our country is being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate. He is the worst president. He just said about me because I said it. But look, he's the worst president in the history of our country. He's destroyed our country. Now all of a sudden he's trying to get a little tough on the border. He came out with a nothing deal, and it reduced it a little bit, like this much. It's insignificant. He wants open borders. He wants our country to either be destroyed or he wants to pick up those people as voters. And I don't think we just can't let it happen. If he wins this election, our country doesn't have a chance, not even a chance, of coming out of this rut. We probably won't have a country left anymore. That's how bad it is.
That's so bad. It's because he doesn't fire anybody. But here he is with a similar situation. Because people are that, this commenter brought up the 13 people. They keep on bringing up the Afghanistan thing. Like, that is equivalent. It has nothing to do with that, right? The Afghanistan debacle was somebody was going to be screwed because those wars were not real wars. They were wars fought for military-industrial complex. They were distraction for the economic collapse. And withdrawing from Afghanistan was going to be a nightmare. Like, everyone knew it. Trump didn't do it. Trump said he was going to do it, but he didn't do it for 4 years, right? And Biden created that bullshit, ISIS-K thing, and was a mess. And all these things that happened with Biden. And so, it was a debacle, certainly. But it was, again, it was like structured to screw somebody over. America doesn't quit and say we lost wars or give up on wars. I mean, it's a whole thing. right? And so whoever was going to be that person was going to take a political hit. This is just Trump's signs of Trump's administration's incompetence. Trump doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. The signal gate. It's about Trump's inability to hire people that can speak truth to power, because someone has to tell Trump he's full of shit, and Trump can't hear that. And so he's got all these yes men that are dopey, all believing in this, Trump fucking agenda, and they're stupid. They have to be stupid to buy into the Trump bullshit. They think Trump's a great man. You can see at least some of them believe in this bullshit, right? So look at this fucking guy right here. I mean, Jesus Christ. And so Trump should fire one of these guys, but it's embarrassing to him to have to fire him. It means he's failed. It represents his inability to pick right people. He's 2 months into this. He's talking about how he said the greatest 2 months in the history of presidency, the Terrasar debacle, which he won't admit to. He can't admit to his mistakes. We'll get into that in a second here. I got another clip to show you. But, again, fire somebody. Somebody needs to be fired. It's no big deal. You have to fire somebody. You need to fire somebody.
It's embarrassing, right. Yes. We're going to get to the bottom of it.
It comes as a federal judge just ruled against the Trump administration, ordering members of that encrypted group chat on Signal, including Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, to preserve all of their texts from that chat. Hegseth shared specific details about when U.S. fighter jets would take off and when bombs would drop, though he insists none of it was classified.
They know it's not war plans. There's no units, no locations, no routes.
Just the guy is just a fast talking. I mean, just a disaster, right? Like there's a performance you have to give. Like all these things are performative. All these roles are performative. Like all this stuff and most people aren't great, but they at least know what the role is. They know the type, the archetype that they're supposed to present. And Pete Hegseth is just, a desperate, fast-talking guy. I mean, he's similar to Trump. And he comes in with all this energy and all this, bravado, all this kind of stuff. And it's not, you want somebody who's thoughtful. I mean, what we're talking about is people's lives, not just American soldiers, but people in other countries and, somebody who has a sense of like, you can't be impulsive, right? Like you can't Trump's impulsive and Hegseth is impulsive. And that's a bad combination for anybody who's, the world and certainly America. When it comes to war, you can't be impulsive when it comes to war. You can't be emotional. It's a major decision. I mean, it's the money it costs and the lives it costs and the suffering it costs and just all of it. A war, you have to think, you got to think over and over again. I mean, it's a big decision. I wouldn't want that decision because sometimes you have to make that decision, but like it should be, the last thing that you would do. Like it's when you have no other recourse. And America's just too eager to go to war because of the military-industrial complex. I mean, that's the other part of that. There's so much money at stake here, right?
Notably, the judge, James Boasberg, randomly assigned to the case, is the same judge the president once impeached for blocking deportation flights of alleged gang members to El Salvador.
Jeez, what are the odds?
Top Republican Senator Roger Wicker today requested an investigation into the Signal chat by the Pentagon's acting inspector general. Attorney General Pam Bondi says a criminal investigation into the leak is unlikely.
It was sensitive information, not...
See, he's got all these people in place now that are Trumpers. Some of these are independent positions. They're firing everybody. So when they do something like this, and maybe this is a test run to show that they're impenetrable. They're building like an iron dome around the Trump administration, so there's no checks and balances anymore. He's got all these dopes that are just Trumpers that are going to protect him. We'll see what, this will play out whatever way it plays out.
Classified and inadvertently released.
And meanwhile, Peter, President Trump just withdrew his nomination for the ambassador to the UN. What's the backstory?
It's because he's, look at this guy. Like, look at that incredible forehead. Like, how is that a human forehead? Like, anyways, there's that. That aspect. Let me go to this other thing from CNN. Okay, so I turned on the news. I turned on the TV when I ate breakfast. and this show was on, and there's a person here that's going to show up that I was going to mention, but I didn't want to get the clip. Let me just show you how this develops here.
What happens if there is a major crisis and this is the response to it?
Well, as a criminal defense attorney, I can tell you often the cover-up is worse than the crime. And I'm not saying this is a cover-up as much as excuses.
Yeah, it is basically a cover-up, so it's the same principle. It's what I've been saying. Everybody's saying it's definitely become worse than. I mean, the issue is definitely bad for those people who are into national security. But the way they've handled it, the lack of accountability, and the entitlement that they have, and all the rest of it. Like there's protocols. There's military protocols. Military is about discipline and rules. Like rules are much more rigid in the military than any other institution that we have. Rules have to be followed, and there's no wiggle room. Like they might cut somebody a deal, but when something becomes public, they got to go with the rules, right? When when the people know about something happening, they have to enforce the rules. There has to be a court martial, and usually they enforce the rules anyway. And so maybe they make some deals behind shady deals behind closed doors or whatever. So because they're all creeps, and those generals are all creeps, right? There's that woman who came out and said talked about Cherry Marines. Her husband was a colonel or somebody important in the military, and he said that all these guys were like gay predators that were taking advantage of the soldiers or whatever, a lot of these generals and stuff. And they had these weird, they have their own, whatever it is, behind closed doors. But things that are public have to be, military is all about rules. And if somebody does something like this, what my brother would call a grunt, right? An average soldier, they would be prosecuted. And so Pete Hegseth, to say that they're not going to be prosecuted and court-martialed, never mind fired, right?
It was a mistake. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It was a horrible mistake. Now, in the world of technology, have all of us had an email that's gone out that shouldn't have gone out, or a text that shouldn't have gone out? Yeah. It's usually not about bombing another country. So, when you're in that position, you have a heightened
table for five. They got these, they have the five on Fox, right? And they all copy each other bullshit shows.
responsibility to the country, to the world, really. When they say Hegseth is not doing a good job, if they're basing it on him putting someone on a tweet or a signal that he shouldn't have, I don't think that's fair. Because, as I said, so many people have done that. I don't think you could use this as a barometer to how they're going to react if, God forbid, a nuclear weapon is coming.
I do. Yeah. I think you can.
Okay.
I'm going to raise my hand
I'm
here.
in the minority.
Right here, hopefully they'll show a face.
I think you can. I also, Sarah Seidner, object to your premise. This is a crisis.
They're quite animated, right?
Crisis. What happened was a crisis. We don't have to wait for a crisis. It was a crisis that the people in charge of our national security are in a group chat texting about it on a commercially available app. That's a crisis. And then the spin...
Here. So, what, you're going to eat somebody? This is Gretchen, forget her last name, doesn't matter. She used to be at Fox. And I think it was Jon Stewart did a piece on her. Somebody did. And it showed all the dopey things she said all the time she played dumb. Dumb blonde, dumb woman, right? She was on Fox's morning show. And she was really stupid. But it turned out she graduated from Stanford with honors, and she was like some beauty queen. She won. She had all these accomplished. She was like accomplished violinist. And she would go act dumb at Fox. But then she was, sexually abused or whatever there. She was harassed, whatever, by Roger Ailes and these other things. And she sued Fox and won. And she was a part of all those Megyn Kelly. They made a movie about that, right? Called Bombshell. And now she's reinvented herself. She won a massive lawsuit from them and reinvented herself. And she's on CNN. And when I turned on, it was the end of the new, it was like the end of the show. It was like, 10 o'clock or something. It was just, the end of the hour. And she was talking about her husband works in baseball. And baseball needed to set a time limit for their games. and the other people were agreeing with her because opening day, and that they wouldn't be able to bring in as many relief pitchers as possible, to face like a left-hander to face a right-handed batter and then bring another relief pitcher, how that, and they have to come and warm up on the mound and all that shit. Because you have the 3-hour, 4-hour fucking games, right? Which they are too long. But you can't set a time limit. It's, innings. I mean, you can cut down the number of innings, but you can't change, just stupid take, right? And so I was like, man, I can't believe she's on Fox. And I didn't feel like, I was like I said, I had because of a headache last night. I'm a little bit groggy and, whatever. I didn't, I want to get going on my stuff. So I decided not to copy it because it was irrelevant to the, what I was talking about here. And then all of a sudden, YouTube recommends this clip. Like, I've never even knew this show existed. I woke up late, so I was eating breakfast late. And here they are on the table of 5. This woman, S.E. Cup, with a big frickin' mouth open, and then this, Gretchen, whatever her name is.
After is yet another crisis, and that's a PR crisis, but it's a crisis of confidence and incompetence. And there is such an easy solution here, which is to fire someone. Fire someone because we just want someone to be held accountable. We just want someone to say, it was me, I did it. This person's going to be fired. But I don't think that's
Okay, so you do have to fire someone just for show, but it shows you how, like, these people are all, it's all about perception. Because Trump firing somebody doesn't get rid of the initial problem, is that he hired bad people, and he's impulsive, they're not thoughtful, and they're not competent. And that speaks to everything that he's doing, especially the economic things he's doing. I got a picture here of like they're changing the labor laws in California. I'll go to that next. I'm in Florida because there's not enough workers because they're deporting people. The whole thing's a mess, right? It's a mess because Trump's incompetent boob, and he isn't the guy that he's convinced his people he is, and he's trying to take decisive action. I mean, he jumps into things, but then he doesn't stick around when he makes a mess. He wants out. Like, he wants to throw somebody under the bus. He wants to go bankrupt. Like, when the thing shits the bed like it inevitably does, he bails, right? It's one thing to be decisive, but he doesn't see things through. There's lots of people, my ex was like this, people who start things but never finish them. And they come in with a lot of passion and a lot of energy, and they convince you this thing has to be done. And it, I know this kind of personality type. And then when things get tough, they're like bail on it, and they want to go to something else that's new, that's exciting. There's people who like new things, and they're going from one relationship to another. They're excited by the newness of something, right? The honeymoon period. This is what grifters do. Grifts aren't supposed to last a long time. And there's the Trump grift, but there's the grift of our economy that isn't supposed to last, 80 years. Like the economy that we have, the debt-based economy, the central bank economy, the usury economy aren't supposed to last this long. And it's one new scam after another to generate wealth, pump and dump type stuff and all this, artificial, valuing of companies and all this stuff and the digital technology and all of it, right? It's just one, illusion after another. It's the illusion of wealth, like Bitcoin and all this stuff. It's only because we agree it has value. Like Bitcoin has it's on devices. Like you can't even hold it in your hand. It's not gold. It's not wheat. It's not salt. Salt was the original currency, salary, right? It came from the word salt. People used to trade blocks of salt as money, right? They used to use that as money. And those things that had value, gold has value because it's shiny and you can make things into it. But, and it has some technological properties now that they use gold. There's little bits of gold in various like phones and things like this, technological devices. But the reality is, gold is more of an idea. Diamonds are more of an idea. Like saying stones, they're beautiful, but are they really worth $1,000 for a little tiny diamond? $10,000 for a wedding ring? These things depreciate. The whole diamond business is like a scam, right? It's all based in perception. And so firing somebody would perceive that you are addressing the problem. But the bigger problem is Trump's tariffs and Trump's impulsive, doing things that he has no idea what the outcome's going to be. Doing things just to say he do stuff. and throwing shit up in the wall and thinking that something might stick, and then be like, well, really, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, right? I mean, this is a really, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing thing. And then Trump saying, I don't know, I wasn't there. It wasn't me, like fucking.
Person's going to be fired, and we're going to work on making sure this never happens again.
See,
that's the solution. We wouldn't be talking about it.
Those are just words, though. It's totally going to happen again. With Trump, this is going to be 4 years of this kind of shit. Whether we find out about it or not, whether it happens where we can see it or behind closed doors.
7 days later.
Very easy to say. A human mistake that many people have made, obviously not at this level, but we're going to tighten up. But this is not a PR thing. It's a character thing that goes to the top, where he cannot say, I made a mistake. Like, let's move forward. Like, he just wants to go forward, forget my mistakes. And that, when we get to a real crisis, he will be unable to say, hey, we made a mistake. You need to understand, we made a mistake and we know how to fix it. You can't just...
I mean, we need to fear from Gretchen sometime, but her baseball take was ridiculous. Anyways, it means nothing. They're just words. Like, words mean nothing. Like, there's no, like I said, for the truth community, we have no leverage. The idea that was behind Alex Jones, who was a shill's InfoWars, wake everybody up, and then people will vote for, whatever, and change the leadership, and then everyone will realize all this stuff that we know now, whatever deep state crap that they believe in. But the reality is, they don't give a shit what you think. Like, they say they care, but the elections are just there to keep you from rioting, to make you, be a part of it. Like I said in my last video, I was talking about the movie Heretic, and that, that woman who used to be a part of the Mormon, the Mormon church or whatever, saying that that's what they say, like, you wanted this, you agreed to this. We didn't force this on you. You did this. Like, you voted, right? You voted. You're a part of this. You made it, like, this is your government. This is democracy. It's on you guys, right? It's only to cast blame on you because they're going to do whatever the fuck they want. And it has nothing to do with your opinion. All they care about is you don't riot. Whatever, and now they probably want you to riot because it's going down. They want to blame you, right? And then when you riot, then they can do martial law and all these other things, and say you guys are the problem, right? They want to blame Trumpers, all these people, all you crazy conspiracy theorists for elected Trumpers, and they can blame all these various people for Trump debacle. It won't be Trump. Trump will be dead. Oh, Trump will be whatever he is, right? But it's all the people that voted for him. All the people. You guys were wrong. We got to take away your. You guys can't vote, this whatever, and the voting's irrelevant anyway. And so, it's a new deal's coming, and this is how they're giving you the new deal. And they're really giving it to you, right? The thing about these Republicans, the guy who wrote that Trump comment I read in the beginning of the video, like, they don't even know they're getting fucked, right? There was that one comment, I didn't know he fucked me the first time. And so, he keeps on fucking you guys, especially... with the Operation Warp Speed and COVID and closing down the economy and January 6th, and he keeps on throwing you under the bus, and you keep on coming back for more, right? He didn't fuck me, he never fucked me. He might fuck you, me, I don't remember. All right, so that's that. Okay, so I saw some MSNBC News reports that, again, like, now they have the ability to do real news because Trump's such a fuck up, right? But this goes beyond Trump. This is all these people. And I'm going to, show you these two things, this and then Greenland. And this is everybody who's in power. Trump is just the most transparent, the most obvious, but they all do it. And it's the end of the end, right? It's the end of our country and our world as we know it because of that, which I'll allude to in a moment. It's about how they all really want to cover up the fact that they're liars and incompetent boobs, where Trump is, just somewhere obvious because he's not trying to hide it, because he doesn't even know. He's like, at least there are other guys, people are conscious of it. Let me show you this one clip first of all.
It is absolutely stunning. It sounds positively un-American. But let's move on to the Wall Street Journal report, Peter, which is that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth allowed his wife to sit in on sensitive meetings. And as we show this video, you can see her right there. She is in the background in the pale blue there.
Watch as she walks through. She's walking like she doesn't belong there, right? Like she's uncomfortable, self-conscious, because they're having like real fucking meetings that are classified with foreign leaders and shit. She's getting a free trip to Hawaii, and apparently he brought his brother as well, which is fine. You're getting a free trip to Hawaii, right? It's whatever. I don't, begrudge people bringing their family, but Jesus Christ, don't bring them to classified meetings. And it shows you that like they just think that they can do whatever they want to do. Pete Hegseth has that arrogant Republican, white guy frat boy energy. That frat boy mentality is like, he's militaristic, but he's at college, and they, and just all of it. And he has those addictive tendencies. When you have a bunch of kids with one woman, cheat with another woman, then you have 3 kids with her, that's your second wife, and then you impregnate your producer, and then cheat on her with a woman who accused you of sexual assault, and you say, and your mom writes a horrible letter about what a womanizing piece of shit you are, and you show up to work drunk and breathing out alcohol from the night before, and you get fired, from Fox News, and then you erase that by saying, I found Jesus. Even if you find God in a legitimate way, you still have those tendencies you got to get rid of. And the cleaning process of the Seichmark system, you still have to work on the mental habits that you have. Like even if the stuff's cleaned out, when it doesn't exist in these other forms of, there's no cleaning process, right? There's confession and these things, but, that's why changing in terms of counseling is really hard because people don't want to change. Changing people or people changing themselves, even if they are motivated to change, is hard. Even if they really want to change, it's hard. But they really have to want to change. We all have to really want to change. Any change that I've done in my life, you have to really, desperately want to change. Otherwise, you won't do it. It's just that simple. If you don't have to, you won't do it. If you don't make yourself do it, you certainly won't do it. And so to say I found Jesus, you still see this guy has a massive hole. Like he's whatever way he's broken, whatever things he's missing, it's just there when he's talking. There's a desperation in the guy. And, these other people that Biden nominated, they all suck. But this guy's there because, 1, he loves Trump. 2, Trump likes people who are good on TV and people that Trump thinks is good looking. It has nothing to do with his competence or his resume. These 2 requirements that somebody does well on TV and they can speak about Trump and Trump agenda in a way that makes Trump happy. And that's all it takes. And that doesn't, those are horrible. That's the worst way to hire somebody. And now the guy's just flaunting his, he's having a party on the government dime, right? And bringing his wife along, like,
In the discussions, what have you heard about this?
Yeah, look, cabinet secretaries have often brought spouses on foreign trips with them, but usually in a sort of a diplomatic kind of role, in the kind of role where they show up for a dinner or for a photo op or what have you. They don't usually sit in on the actual business meetings, certainly ones with sensitive topics like war in Europe. That's very unusual, and I think that that's something that obviously has caused consternation at the Defense Department, where they take things like this seriously. They have protocols for secrecy, and Alex obviously can talk about that better than I can. Mm-hmm. But I think that this is a thing that obviously has offended some people who are in charge of protecting the nation's secrets because they don't see it as, in concert with the rules and the protocols and the traditions that the country has established over many, many years.
Yeah, well, as Pete has suggested, let's go to you, Alex, because according to this report, these 2 meetings were with foreign military counterparts. So, Alex, what level of classification would they fall under? And describe how unusual it is for an official spouse who has no security clearances, as far as we know, to be allowed into these rooms.
Alex, these meetings are often somewhat sensitive, and so a spouse typically wouldn't be invited. It's not unusual to bring a spouse to a foreign military installation, for example, to meet with the spouses of service members. In fact, that is a great touch point to hear some of their concerns and their challenges.
The guy's a fuck up. He's a screw up. Like he just is. And Trump's a screw up. But they're not the only ones. Like Trump didn't invent this shit, right? This is, like Trump's just arrogant and forceful and just a child. Let me show you the Greenland thing, and then I want to come back to this stuff. I got one point to round this whole thing up. I'm going to tell you what's wrong with Trumpers, Republicans, but how this applies to every one of us and why it means we're 100% fucked. You know, it's an orientation to life. And so let's start here with Trump on Greenland.
The Vice President is in Greenland right now. Do you have plans to expand U.S. military presence in Greenland?
We get along very well with Denmark. We've always had a good. Denmark does a lot of business in the United States. We don't do so much there, but they do a lot of business in the United States. And
saying that there's a lot of exports so that we could tariff the shit out of them and screw them over because they're like 10 million people. So let me just say, you know, I know a lot of Danes, people from Denmark. Denmark, for a very small country, is, you know, the Danish people just loved Babaji and, you know, whatever extent Chargy, the two of the second and third master massage mark system. And there was these Danes that came over. They used to stay at Babaji's house. They have video of them. You know, these people, boomer kind of hippies. And they're just lovely people. Like, everyone loves the people from Denmark. And I know, like, I mean, I've had conversations with probably 20 or 30 of them, and I know of them. I was friends with a lot of them on Facebook, you know, before the whole Gratefullness debacle. And, you know, Babaji went specifically to Denmark. You know, in all the European countries and America, there's two types of preceptors. There's provisional preceptors that are, you know, they removed one spiritual point. And there are full preceptors that are moved 7 points. And he made 7 full preceptors or 6 full preceptors in Denmark. He loved the Danes, sweet people. You know, they used to be Vikings. You know, there's this time I was talking to this other guy, like he was an old-time hippie Yabiasi. He didn't look like a hippie, but he was from that generation. And he said he went to see Babaji in Shahjahanpur. And Shahjahanpur was this god-awful village, you know, with a lot of, like, you know, just, they called them dacoits or dacoits or something. Dacoits were robbers and, you know, kind of not a clean place, not evolved, you know, very primitive village in northern India. And he got off the train, and people would come in there at like 2 a.m. and get off this train station and be in this weird village that wasn't so great, you know, it was not so nice a place, and have to find Babaji's house, right? And this guy, you know, came in and, you know, like he came in during the day, but these people would show up in the middle of the night because that's when the train ran. And he's walking down the street, right? Babaji lives like on Main Street. You know, they have a few streets, small town. You know, this is back in the 60s, 70s, you know, 70s. He's walking down the street and he's looking for a house. And, you know, it's all impoverished simple Indian villagers. And there's he said these like 4 tall, beautiful blonde girls coming out of this house. He goes, oh, that's got to be it, because there's these giant Danish women there, right? You know, they're all like 5'11", 6 foot. These guys, they're 6'4", you know, big ex-Viking people. But just really nice and sweet, very practical. Like, they're the kind of the best people of all the Europeans. Just a sweet personality. I mean, these are, you know, people have tendencies towards spirituality. But, you know, some of these countries, there's a lot of innocence, and there's a lot of, you know, they have, you know, with only 10 million people, 6 million people, you know, the size of, like, you know, Los Angeles practically in terms of the population. In a country that has a lot of resources, the people all live fairly well. You know, they have community. You know, they don't. You know, they're living nice. It's like a whole big country's a suburb, right? And Trump's threatening that. He's threatening, you know, if a lot of their money comes from exports to America, which some of it does. I don't know how much it does. He's saying, you know, I'm going to fuck you over with a tariff because we don't sell you anything, so you can't tariff us back. That's what he's implying here. They do a lot of business with us. We don't do so much with them if you don't give us Greenland. Like, he's going to bully Denmark, and it gets even worse than that.
And I think I think everybody wants to see that work out. We need Greenland, very importantly, for international security. We have to have Greenland. It's not a question of, do you think we can do without it? We can't. If you look at Greenland right now, if you look at the waterways, you have Chinese and Russian ships all over the place. And we're not going to be able to do that. We're not relying on Denmark or anybody else to take care of that situation. And we're not talking about peace for the United States. We're talking about world peace. We're talking about
Okay, so, like, we have to have Greenland. Now, Trump is like a toddler. I used to think he was maybe emotionally older. Give me that. Like, you bring your toddler in the store. Can I have that? Can I have that? Can I have that? Right? Oh, look at that. I want that. I want Canada. I want Greenland. I want the Panama Canal. Let's name this the Gulf of America. Just impulsive, and he doesn't think about other people or what their situation is. And he's embracing this McKinley era, with this guy McKinley, where it was annexing all kinds of lands and doing this stuff. It's a dark period, just colonization type stuff. He's a colonizer. He just wants to grab all this shit. And, he's a moron. He's only going to be president for another, less than 4 years, right? 3 years and 10 months. And he'll be a lame duck for the last couple if he even makes it that long. And then, there's could be active rebellion going on. He's going to piss everybody off. He doesn't think about the future, how his behavior and these things he's going to do is going to affect Americans or how it affects other people in the world. He's just, give me. I want it now. He's just a fucking toddler, right? And he ain't getting to Greenland. This isn't going to happen. And, he's just going to piss more and more people off. And if he starts grabbing these things and bullying these countries, these other countries are going to be like, oh, we got to stop this motherfucker. At some point, they're going to look at this guy like he's a Hitler. This guy is fucking, in some modern day sense. Like, we got to put this fucking guy down. We got to put down the whole country because this is the guy they elected. This is the guy they wanted. And there's a growing attitude in America that says, yeah, let's fuck everybody. Let's just bully them and take their shit. This frat boy stuff. I'm going to come back to that. So this is the frat boy mentality. And it fucking isn't working for the majority of people. And so at some point, they're going to be like, all right, we got to stop fucking America. And they can take America down because everything's based in perception. And they, just like any empire, can fall. And, it's time anyway. They're wanting this guy to run it into the ground for this reason and the fact that they can't continue on with your lifestyle. So it gets worse here.
Has previously not ruled out military force when he's talking about taking over Greenland. But your rhetoric today is more about encouraging the Greenlandic people to vote for independence. Do you think the rhetoric has changed about that, or what's your message there?
No, I don't think it's changed at all. Look, the president said clearly he doesn't think that military force is going to be necessary, but
he doesn't think it's going to be necessary? What do you mean? You're going to go to war with Denmark? You're going to enforce this? You're going to go to war with fucking Denmark? You're threatening military force with Denmark? Right? Because of a country they own? Like what if Greenland came in and said, hey, we want to fucking take over Maine? Well, you guys aren't doing a good job with Maine. We need it to protect this fucking silly shit like this, right? We don't think we're going to have to use military force. What force are you willing to use to take a country from a sovereign European country that's part of the European Union? Putin isn't threatening to take fucking Greenland. He isn't threatening to take any NATO country. Greenland's a part of, Denmark's a part of NATO. And Greenland's a part of that. You just can't fucking take their country. Fuck are you talking about, right? You're going to use military force again. What, you're going to invade Canada first, right? What the fuck? You make Canada a state and then go over there and force Denmark to give up Greenland, right? What, are you playing a game of fucking Risk? This isn't fucking the way things work. You can't just start doing shit like that and not expect people to react in some way. Get the fuck out of here. It's freaking... Put on your eyeliner and get the fuck out of here.
Absolutely believes that Greenland is an important part of the security, not just of the United States, but of the world and, of course, the people of Greenland, too. It's very simple. I think the president's been very consistent here from his State of the Union, from his inaugural address, and every public statement that he's made. This territory, Greenland, really matters for the security of the United States. It's extremely vulnerable right now. And if the people of Greenland were willing to partner with the United States, and I think that they ultimately will partner with the United States, we could make them much more secure. We could do a lot more protection. And I think they'd fare a lot better economically as well.
Okay, so they're not under any threat. The people in Greenland, they protested this thing. They don't want to go to America. Look at this fucking guy here.
This has to happen. And the reason it has to happen, I hate to say it, is because our friends in Denmark have not done their job in keeping this area safe.
Oh, my God. All of a sudden you care about Greenland? Now, he makes a statement. I have another video. Hopefully we have that in that video. If not, I'll go find it. But he makes a statement to the people of Greenland, like all of a sudden he gives a shit about them, right? Like this is just some fucking random thing that Trump is concerned about. Like he thinks that we're gonna, I mean, you're planning for war then if you're saying that the waterways, the Atlantic Ocean is not safe unless we have Greenland. Like, what? I mean, like, you know, it's not like you're going to fire on Russia or China, you know, if you're going to put missiles there or whatever you're going to do to secure, you know, to secure the Atlantic Ocean. Greenland's really, you know, closer to Europe, right? I mean, it's, you know, it's in between America and Europe. And so, like, if you want to go with war with Canada or Europe, you would take Greenland, not fucking, I mean, is he trying to annex Europe now too? Like, you know.
They just haven't done it. It's very simple. For all of our friends in the American media who attack the administration for pointing out the obvious, what is the alternative? To give up the North Atlantic, to give up the Arctic to China, to Russia, and to other regimes that don't have the best interest of the American people at heart? We have no other.
So they say they're going to invade those areas and you can't stop them unless you have Greenland? I mean, look at this guy rocking it. He's doing this.
Option, we need to take a significant position in Greenland to keep the people here safe, but to keep our own country safe too.
Because you really care about the people. That's why you've just worried about Greenland and the people there. Fucking frozen ass fucking country, right?
We'll do one or two more. Yeah.
Trump said this week the U.S. would go as far as we have to go to acquire Greenland. In that same vein, on that question, are there plans that have been drafted to use military force to take over Greenland?
Well, what the president has said, is that we need to have more of a position in Greenland. We need it, again, for the safety of the American people. And what we think is going to happen is that the Greenlanders are going to choose through self-determination to become independent of Denmark, and then we're going to have conversations with the people of Greenland from there. So I think that talking about anything too far in the future is way too premature. We do not think that military force is ever going to be necessary.
Again, we do not think military force is going to be necessary. But it could be. So you're putting that on the table. That you're going to go to war with a European country over fucking Greenland. You're going to go to war with Denmark over Greenland.
We think this makes sense. And because we think the people of Greenland are rational and good, we think we're going to be able to cut a deal, Donald Trump style, to ensure.
Because if they're not rational and good, they won't choose America. So we're going to cut a deal Donald Trump style. You know, what does that mean? Fucking pouting little, whiny little, cowardly little fucking bully bullshit that he does? Is that what you mean? Like, what little bitch-ass motherfuckers these guys are.
Ensure the security of this territory, but also the United States of America.
Boom. Okay, so this has been set up on my toolbar. I don't know if I watched a little bit of it. I saw a clip. I hope it's here. If not, I'll find the clip. But let's watch this from fucking Gumby Joe here.
NBC News foreign correspondent is not. She joins us from Greenland's capital.
Look at that fucking shit, right? Middle of May. Look at the fucking icebergs and shit out here.
Molly, what can you tell us about the sentiment there ahead of the vice president coming up to Greenland?
Well, first off, I'm very glad I'm not going to be here for 10 days at the end of January. I think it's a little bit toastier than it would have been a couple months ago. But it is well below freezing this morning. And I got to tell you, when the vice president, the second lady, the energy secretary, Mike Waltz, the national security advisor, Joe, and the whole high-level U.S. delegation head to the Northwest, it's going to be way colder up at that space base. But after a week of intense political...
Okay, this isn't it. It's just a waste of time. Big Brother is bullying us. There's some people here. Here.
Any relationship with the U.S. must be about collaboration. If no station there. The trip, originally billed as a cultural exchange, now a limited national security-focused mission. Greenlandic Member of Parliament Kupanik Olsen says any relationship with the U.S. must be about collaboration.
If you met the vice president, J.D. Vance, what would you say to him?
I would say, please do not take us. We are open.
Please do not take us. Please don't take us. Please don't take us, J.D. Vance. It sounds like he's going to R him, right?
For negotiations, but it should be on our behalf.
The heightened interest comes as competition in the Arctic.
All right, so, you know, just the, whatever it is, right? Let me find the other thing here. So this is the thing here.
Of the world's largest island.
Our message to Denmark is very simple. You have not done a good job by the people of Greenland. You have underinvested in the people of Greenland, and you have underinvested in the security architecture of this incredible, beautiful landmass filled with incredible people.
Again, they just make up a story. No one gave a shit about this. He didn't campaign on this, right? Trump didn't say he was going to annex Gaza and Greenland. And you're going to invest American dollars now into Greenland? How much are you going to invest there? Like, what are you going to get out of it? What is America going to get out of it, right? With Trump, everything is about... Well, let me switch over to voiceover here. Trump comes from a corporate mentality where you acquire things. You annex things. You acquire whatever. He bought he wanted to be around young girls, teenage girls, and, young women, in this beauty contest, which he, he exploited in a very Trump way. So he bought the Miss USA pageants, right? Like he just acquires things, and that's what businesses do. They're looking to expand and acquire hostile takeovers, and you can just buy shit and own shit, right? And Trump's trying to do that with America. So if you look at the things, Gaza Strip, he says we now own. We just own it because we are. I just proclaimed with the authority of the American government, I'm planting my flag on Gaza. I mean, that was like fucking weird ass shit. The Panama Canal wants to take that back. Gulf of America, Greenland, Canada, probably other things I forgot about. And he's just going to keep on doing that. Acquire this, acquire that, right? This land expansion, colonization. He likes McKinley because McKinley was doing that, all that stuff with Alaska, all those things, right? Like it's one of his favorite eras. He talks about all these things. And so, he's immature and childish, but it represents, and the people that follow Trump think that America is just we're better than everybody else. I mean, racially or just in terms of our country, USA, USA, USA. And we should just impose our will because we have the biggest army and bully everybody. And just take everything that we want and have this attitude because we're America and we deserve it. We're already glomming 25% of the resources in the world. And all these people that follow Trump believe in this shit, right? Because they've always believed in this manifest destiny because we're Christians, because we're white, because we're, wherever wherever they are, that we have some, we've been ordained by God to just take shit. That comes from the Queen of England, the King of England, and they have that, the orb and the scepter when they get sworn in means that they're God's representative on earth. The king or the queen of England is thought about as being God's representative on earth. Think about that fucking shit, right? Nobody's God representative. No one's God's representative, right? Nobody represents God. You can humble yourself and let God come through you and work with God. But it takes a lot of discipline and a lot of minimization of your ego. Not this ostentatious wearing crowns and sitting on thrones and walking around and glomming all this money from the British people and invading all these countries and all that shit. That ain't God's will. I mean, God might have wanted, not God, but a divine plan wanted human beings to connect globally, but no one said anything about just going into, weaker people's lands and beating the shit out of them and taking their land. And a lot of people believe that that's totally okay, right? I mean, not just white people and English people and Americans, not just those colonizers, but people have colonized even Aboriginal tribes were beating the shit out of each other and taking slaves. It's a real flaw with human beings to think that you're more important than other people. And if you have the ability to force other people to bend to your will, you'll do that. And that's what Trump is saying very transparently, right? And that none of you guys matter. And he's clueless to the fact that any time America can be taken down, right? We have to serve a purpose for the people who run the world and all these other countries and, all of it. And we no longer serve that purpose, which we really don't now. Then, well, why do they get 25% of the resources? And it's just not sustainable. So they want to take America down, but Trump is taking America down. Everything's about collapse, but Trump is, a child, and he's playing like a game of Risk out there, like it's just fucking silly. But more importantly, on it, like a bigger scale, like something that's that's more profound in this whole thing. The reason why they can't deal with Signalgate is because they can't admit to what they are, that they're boobs, right? Like they shouldn't be using Signal. That wasn't ever supposed to be used. I don't know what Biden was using it for, but he shouldn't have used it either. And that people who are in charge of this level of the military, they go through all this training, like all this stuff about what's secure, what isn't secure, and all these things. And this was clearly not secure. I mean, the fact that they leaked it to this reporter is only the tip of the iceberg. And so if it isn't that hard to admit and fire somebody and take some accountability, but Trump never does that because he can't admit that he's wrong. He can never admit that he's making a mistake because he's saying this is the greatest 2 months that a president's ever had. So they'll never admit they're wrong, which is fucking really dangerous. And never admit they're making mistakes, and pretty much everything he's doing is a mistake. The gender thing, that was good. Like, I can only think of one or two things that he's done that's good, and the rest of it is like a blatant mistake or at least very questionable. And the way he's acting and the way he's setting off alarm bells all across the globe, and he's just, he's a disaster, right? And he's unhinged, and he doesn't even know it. He thinks he's just being great. And so, like, there's all kinds of dangerous shit there, and he's, hired these people that aren't qualified for these jobs. And Pete Hegseth is clearly not qualified. There's something broken in him. There's some desperation in him. The same thing that made him womanize and drink, be addicted to alcohol and, make poor decisions and things like this. And he's a mess, and he's the same as Trump, not able to admit to his failures. Like, and then he said, and he'll just erase it. I found Jesus. Now I'm all better. I mean, it's just a sickness. And so, it's really bad, but it's the same thing with the Biden administration. And the same thing with the media. None of them can admit they suck. None of them can admit like they're like fallen and they're just, they're depraved and they're liars and they're constantly spinning and lying and, all of it. None of them can admit to what they are. That's why Biden couldn't admit to that he was, he had some kind of, mental cognitive issues. Of course, he wasn't going to be able to do that because he had mental cognitive issues. But they didn't admit to forcing that guy on us, both the media and the Democratic Party. Like, even though that was kind of out in the open. And so if you put that all together as a whole, like all these people are doing bad shit and they're lying and spinning. And when their guy does something, they cover for him and minimize it. When the other guy does it, they try to exaggerate it. And they never look in the mirror and say, oh my God, I suck or we suck. They never come to that terms. Like, they just don't realize. They won't admit they suck. They all suck. Like, they're horrible people. Like, this is, it's not just, it's not just doing bad things and that hurts other people and hurts yourself. It's unsustainable. It's like, lies that are eventually going to get exposed and bad decisions that are going to come bite you in the ass. None of these things are, it's the only kind of things you do when you're going to collapse a country or a company or yourself, right? Like, this kind of thing, when you do this, you're on a self-destructive path. Both sides, all these people that are on the show, they're all self-destructive. Like, none of them are functional. None of them are, can navigate the treacherous waters of this system and still retain some level of dignity and some level of morality or these things. They're all corrupt, and none of them can admit to it when they make a mistake because then they're admitting how bad they suck, right? They can never say how bad it is. They have to minimize it, right? They have to make excuses. And Trump is doing this more flagrantly than the rest of them, but that's what they all do. And so this is what I was saying at the beginning of the video. This is why we're fucked because, this is how people are right now. And they're just going to get worse because people don't even know what it was like to have a good family. I mean, if you think about the healthy marriages that are out there, whether the kids and the family and all are productive and, people are connected to God in some way and they're working on their character qualities and things. There's love in the family. The mother, the parents love each other and there's an extended family and everyone likes to be around each other. Like, that just doesn't exist anymore. And now with the internet, even if you have good parents, the kids just, they just don't connect anyway, and they get their their training and their education from the internet and their school and all this stuff. Like if the parents are great, the kids aren't, because of they're growing up in a world where you don't have a relationship with their parents, and they're not wanting to do things in the real world, and there's all these generational misunderstandings and things. And so we don't even know what it's like. These kids don't know what it's like to have a good family and a solid marriage, and they're getting their education and their from degraded shit on the internet, like pornography and just all of it, like pornography in every possible form, right? And they're depressed, and they're they have no idea about what life is and what it was like for us and generations before that, right? Like we don't know what it was like, and so all this information is lost. And now the system's collapsing, and we don't have a backup plan. And, it's because of all this stuff. I mean, it's really bad. And it's not, anything. It doesn't go past the fact that it's the people that's the problem. People are getting worse, like getting stupider. It's idiocracy. You're getting weaker, more entitled. And that is an indication of a shitty system. And the people are the system, and the system is the people. And so if you're system is making people worse, then your system sucks and it shouldn't be saved, right? And each generation gets worse. The technology gets better. The quality of life gets easier, more pleasurable, less stressful. We have more control over things, but yet people are getting worse. And so that's something for everyone to consider, like weaker. Like we wouldn't even make good pets, like or livestock or something. Like people would, if there are superior beings that look at human beings and say, they're weak. They get sick. They all kinds of flaws and genetic flaws, and they're violent and fighty, and they're disobedient. I mean, like they're not. I mean, look at the difference between like having a monkey or a dog. A chimpanzee that grows up to rip your face off, or a dog that loves you your whole life. They say, and so, I mean, it's really bad, and like we've lost sight of that, like. All these people, it's when the Republicans are doing bad, the Democrats are like, well, look, we're the good guys, but there are no good guys. Like, that's the thing. There's just no fucking good guys. There's no, it's just all people going in the wrong direction, and all of us fighting for our right to go in the wrong direction, instead of realizing that, we got to be disciplined and rein in our impulsive behavior, and we don't get to do whatever we want. We have to have some inner discipline and some connection to God, and we have to say no to ourselves. And every time we want something, we just can't go get it. We have to, we have to look at the bigger picture. Well, anyways, you get it or not. Who gives a shit? It's just words. I mean, the collapse is upon us, and more importantly, there is like what we have now sucks. I mean, in terms of the majority of people are miserable. They're miserable with, better lifestyle. It's because, rich people are the most miserable people on the planet. I mean, most of them. Why is that? Like, they have all the stuff and all the, all the things that money can fix. I'm talking about the millionaires and billionaires and people like that. And the more they get, the worse it is for them. And there's no love in their marriages, and there's no, everybody's just mean, and the family. And we see these things like the Succession show and all these things. More dysfunctional, weaker they get, right? And so that should tell everybody something. That acquiring things isn't the goal of life. Grabbing as much as you can isn't the goal of life. Hoarding isn't the goal of life. Being famous, rich and famous isn't the goal of life, right? All those people that obtain those achievements end up being miserable. And so it has to be something else. And it starts with internalizing your connection to God, and internalizing your sense of self and self-worth, and finding, your purpose out in the world and doing it. Like you're sent down here to do something, like you're on a mission. You're born and you have a plan, and there's what's called samskaras. You have this plan, a life plan. You have a role to play here. And finding that role and playing it is imperative for your sake and everybody else's sake. And then, just doing your duty and then getting the fuck out of here, right? But, in a way that you're grateful, you had this opportunity, you grew, and you did what you needed to do, and now you can move on to bigger and better things. But instead, people are just lost in a video game trying to grab as much shit as possible. And most of the stuff they don't like and makes them feel worse, but they keep on grabbing it anyway. Anyways, let's wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Parabano definitely reporting for the Apocalypse. And the Ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.